Two. Welcome back to Battle of the Ballads, everybody. I'm with Greg and Joe, who are taking a nice journey with me through all of music since 1984, because what a great year to start. Tonight we are doing 1990 and 1991. We made it through the 6 years of the 80s we did, with Prince Purple Rain coming out on top. And we're going to see how far he can go. I reached out on the Facebook world to find out some suggestions I can get for these 2 years. They're very big in music, and some folks gave us some suggestions. Corey Kesslerling, our film critic, he wants us another 1997 Return of the Mac needs to win, but Prince's Purple Rain needs to win all time. Jessica Sniteki said We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel for 1990, and More Than Words by Extreme for 1991 because it was her 8th grade dance song. She also said honorable mentions were Belle Biv DeVoe's Poison and Vogue's Hold On, and Alana Miles' Black Velvet. My guy Drew Thompson said 1990, Warrant's Sure Feels Good to Me, and 1991, Slave to the Grind by Skid Row, which that album he absolutely loved. My buddy who's a local rapper here, Jeremy Newton, he said 1990, we have Here and Now, Luther Vandross. In 91, Everybody Dance Now by CNC Music Factory.
Okay, good choices.
My guy Dan Askey said Tony Joe White, Polk Salad Annie, and I had just heard it for the first time, and I'll probably never listen to it again, but thank you, Dan. Jeremiah Perry Hill, 1990, You Can't Touch This, The Humpty Dance, or Nothing Compares to You. In 91, he said there's too many bangers. Smells Like Teen Spirit, Motown Philly, Set Adrift on Memory Bliss, Now That We Found Love, Gypsy Woman, all great songs. Austin Pettigrew, who has a spot in my heart because he's in Canada and gets a lot of Canadian music. He just want to tell us that in 1991, Only Shallow by My Bloody Valentine was what we should be hearing. My guy Nathan Hendrickson, 1990 and 1991, starts the genesis of grunge rock, kicking hairbands out, and you gotta love Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana, Jeremy by Pearl Jam, and OPP by Naughty by Nature, which who can argue with that? Ellen, who actually follows us regularly and critiques me and sends me messages after listening to our YouTube videos. She's our critic. I think the one fan we have, gentlemen.
She's a crossover fan too. Ellen also listens to the podcast we do as well.
She does. She listens to the podcast as well. And
so double shout out to Ellen.
Yes, Ellen.
Keep criticizing Dan.
Criticize my life's work, me, my hairline, everything. But she gave us 7 songs because Where Does My Heart Beat Now, Celine Dion. Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, great song, Elton John, George Michael. Thunder Rolls, Garth Brooks. Everything I Do It For You, Bryan Adams. Smells Like Teen Spirit, Nirvana. I love that she said not a favorite song of mine personally, but I can't ignore its significance. Fancy by Reba McEntire, and End of the Road, Boyz II Men. Not a favorite, but can't ignore the significance. And also, I Don't Have the Heart, James Ingram, which she messaged me while she was listening to and said that we brought her back to that. So I'm glad we could have that effect on somebody. Jen Pop Benz, who I've known since my high school years. She broke it down by genre. She said for pop, EMF, Unbelievable. For metal, hair metal, Faith No More, Epic.
Wait, pause on that Faith No More. It didn't make either of my short list, but I'm glad she mentioned it because I'm going to piss someone off here, but that is the first new metal track. Go back and listen to it if you haven't heard it original in a while. It's as new metal gets. So congrats on Faith No More for inventing the genre and not getting credit for it.
And to be honest, I love them. I love their tracks, and it didn't even make my enter into my register of I should name this. So I was actually yes, you're right.
It's a great song. It just there's a lot of great music in this 2 years.
Yeah. This was a hard couple of years.
So. I mean, she also brought up songs that I didn't really consider that I probably should have, but they fell off quick. Rock grunge. She had Alice in Chains, Man in a Box. Hip hop. She had Biz Markie, Just a Friend, with Vanilla Ice as a runner-up for Ice Ice Baby, and despite the joke it was pretty iconic. 91 was interesting, and I think it probably fell in line with a lot of our stuff. She had for pop, Chris Isaac, Wicked Game, great track. Metal, hair metal, Guns N' Roses, Civil War. Rock, grunge, she put Queen, The Show Must Go On. And then she also had Cypress Hill, How I Could Just Kill a Man. And that was on my list, definitely.
Definitely on my short list. And shout out for her. She's the only one who mentioned Cypress Hill. And that was their debut studio album.
Yes.
And I think really underrated early Cypress Hill stuff because this is pre-feud with Ice Cube. So
yes, that was, I mean, that was Cypress Hill to me. You know, they had, you know, popular shit, but that was Cypress Hill to me. Nicole
My
says
choice for
Molly's-
91 not mentioned yet. So
None of my choices were actually, one of my choices was mentioned, I believe. Nicole said there was a bunch of crap, but she thinks that George Michael's Freedom is dope. And
George
like I-
Michael's Freedom is an amazing song, but sounds very 80s. And it's a 1990 song, so it's not too surprised it's 80s. But I've listened to it a couple times today alone. It is maybe the most 80s song that's going to get talked about today, I think.
An unpopular hot take, I think Akon did it better, and I'll just see myself out.
All right, Joe. Looks like it's just you and I now.
And my guy Paul Brenner from Joywave said that just 91 Nirvana smells like Teen Spirit, boom, easy. He's in a band from Rochester here and loves himself some music. So smells like Teen Spirit came up a lot. I'm sure that we'll discuss it as well. It was really cool to have people interact about this. I hope that they continue to watch these videos and progress and shit on our decisions and share their own in the comments. So here's something for that. And since it is just the two of you left in this conversation, because I took the Akon route. Greg, 1990, my man. Let's start with you. We just went through a lot of tracks. I know that. So I just
we did just go through a lot of tracks, and what I kind of loved is a lot of people picked tracks from 1991 that were popular singles of 1990 and 1991 but weren't released, which is something we keep running into. They're picking their favorite songs of the year. They're not doing the research like we are, but I'm just happy they're engaging. Even with 1990, I'm gonna have an obvious choice. I think 91. I'm also going to have an obvious choice, but Joe and I were talking this morning. I was trying so hard not to pick something from Nirvana in 91. We'll get to where I landed, but the tracks in 1990 and 1991, it's just amazing. Spotify has playlists of the top hits for each year. 1990 is a little harder to look for because you'll get so many 1990s playlists, but it was fun going back and listening to those. But it's something, if you're going to compile a list like us, I do not recommend doing before you decide on your list, because every song I heard, I'm like, shit, that's got to be on my list. I forgot how great that Sinead O'Connor song was, but I forgot how great it was because it's not a song that comes in regular rotation. So this morning would have been on my list, but it isn't because it's not a song that means a lot to me personally.
It is on my list because it is great.
It is. 1990.
Akon did it better, just so you know.
Akon did your job better.
That's valid.
So actually, like, we're kind of hating on you for that Akon opinion, but Akon's a wonderful person. So
yeah, great human.
1990, the debut albums of people that became relevant throughout all of the 90s and early 2000s include Ice Cube's solo album, Bill Bev DeVoe, I guess relevancy throughout the 90s, lesser, but I mean, Poison is the song everywhere. Mariah Carey, A Tribe Called Quest, were all debut albums in 1990, as well as Superchunk, which is a band not everyone knows. I know they're on the Clueless soundtrack. They're on a number of soundtracks. I love Superchunk. I have many of their records on vinyl, but I think the fact that they founded Merge Records and then focused on Merge Records and promoting other artists is the most interesting and most important thing they did for music, but I can't not shout them out because Superchunk is awesome. But 1990, my short list: You Can't Touch This, MC Hammer, Poison, Bell Biv DeVoe, Kid vs. Play, The Battle from the Kid and Play soundtrack. One of two soundtracks that year that deserve mentioning outside of our soundtrack conversation, because The Simpsons Sing the Blues also came out, and I think a number of tracks charted in 90 and 91 from that. Let's talk about Sex, Salt and Pepper. I believe the album came out maybe the year after, but the song was definitely 1990. Mm-hmm. And off that Tribe album, I Left My Wallet in El Segundo, which is my favorite song to jog to. The one or two times in my life I've ever gone jogging. Can I Kick It? And Bonita Applebum, which is the greatest song title of all time.
That's my favorite Tribe song too.
Step by Step, New Kids on the Block, Band in the USA, Two Live Crew. Not my favorite track. I'm not a huge Two Live Crew fan, but the uproar that song caused is worth mentioning alone.
Uncle Luke.
Freedom 90, George Michael, like lyrically one of the greatest songs ever. But as I said earlier, musically, it's a very, very dated 80s sounding song. Play that funky music, Vanilla Ice, Slack Motherfucker, Super Chunk. I think that was the only like song that got traction off that album.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as no surprise to anyone who's been listening to this, my song of the year is going to come off of LL Cool J's album that came out that year, which included its track "The Booming System," "Around the Way Girl,"
The Way Girl,
"Eat 'Em Up, El Chill," "Mr. Goodbar," "Farmers Boulevard," which is like a great rap anthem, "Mama Said Knock You Out," "Jinglin' Baby," the remix, "To the Break of Dawn," "6 Minutes of Pleasure." Like this album is just
it's a banger.
Insane. And I was trying to convince myself to not pick "Mama Said Knock You Out" because I love Jinglin' Baby. I love "Around the Way Girl" and "Booming System," but it's "Mama Said Knock You Out." I mean, it was parodied. The video had Tyson, who, I mean, Tyson's still culturally relevant and I think will be until long after he's passed. But he had Tyson in the video. I mean, and the story of him struggling to write a song and his grandmother told him to go knock him out is just that being the inspiration for the song. I mean, for me, 1990 song of the year, "Mama Said Knock You Out." And as much as I tried to convince myself to pick something else, I mean, "6 Minutes of Pleasure," like I think really set the tone of what was to come in LL's sex songs, and more of those we'll get to later. "Around the Way Girl" is just such a jam.
Yes.
But no, it's "Mama Said Knock You Out." As much as I love everything off that album, it's the only choice for me.
You know, we've spoken of cultural relevance, and that became a catchphrase for most of the '90s, and it still pops up now. I mean, every sitcom, you know, we had Fresh Prince, Family Matters, Martin, Step by Step. You know, they all use Boy Meets World. It's appeared on all of them. You know, so it's just as a catchphrase alone, definitely transcended.
Well, and people know I love LL Cool J that know just casual things about me. But I was 10 when I really got into LL Cool J because that was for Joe and I, that was when our mother got us a stereo with a CD player and CDs for our 10th birthday.
Nice.
And my first three CDs were LL Cool J's All World, his first greatest hits collection, the Will Smith Millennium, no, and then Bone Thugs and Harmony E99. And that's when I became an LL fan. So, but I knew "Mama Said Knock You Out" long before that because of its cultural relevance for being a white guy living in northern New York, where when the Rugrats soundtrack came out, they had one of the tracks off there with Maya, and then it was Maya, Little C's, and Mace.
Oh my God, yes.
Our local radio station cut off the song before it got to the Mace and Little C's verses at the end. So you got Maya and 112 singing, and then it cut off the rap. That is the kind of town we were living at the time when I discovered LL Cool J. So to know anything about that, like we had to search, we had to know. And this is pre-internet being in every home in everyone's pocket. So the cultural relevance is just insane for that early LL Cool J. I know a lot of people think of him as the guy that hosts the Grammy announcements and battle. And he does do all that because he's charismatic as all hell. But long before he was that guy CBS put on things because they needed someone,
Yeah.
he was this insane kid from Queens who put rap on his shoulders for a while. So
Hot is multifaceted. So Joe, you kind of surprised me, Greg. I thought you were going to stay away from it for some reason. I thought you were.
I tried.
I knew it was going to be an LL. I just wasn't sure which one. I wasn't positive it was going to be "Mama Said Knock You Out," but
I thought maybe "Around the Way Girl" if we were going there. Not even my personal thing. Just I thought that was up Greg, but I had an inkling of LL, and I thought that's why you wouldn't do LL to just get our minds.
And I wanted to change it up, but since we do try and balance both personal and cultural
Oh, I
significance.
feel you. That's a great choice.
I thought about the curveball I thought about going in. It's the last one I listed on the short list was Slack Motherfucker. And I thought just throwing Super Chunk in there would be hilarious, but I was like, no, now I'm just trolling. So, and then Kid vs. Play I also thought about because the Kid and Play dance is iconic, but I feel like the dance is more iconic than the song. As great as the movie is, it's the dance is what people take away from it. That and the high top. So
yeah, love it. So Joe, I'm curious on yours now. I just love doing this with the two of you because you guys know each other's music styles and everything else so well. It's funny to see how it balances each other out.
Well, interestingly, I didn't find 1990 to be that difficult. When I went through the things released and I finished, I only had 12 songs anyway. I found that this year was a lot of older bands that were more popular in the 70s and 80s still releasing music that I prefer their older stuff, like their earlier stuff, and a lot of debut albums and EPs that I actually like stuff off of second and third albums better as well. And so even though I don't mind them, looking at the albums, I'm like, no, I'm going to wait until later in this decade to talk about these. They're not making my short list yet. So I actually found this year not that bad. I'll just say it, I guess, since I only had 12 anyway. The one I ultimately ended up cutting because I was trying to get down to just my 10 and then my top was War Pigs, Ozzy. And I ended up chopping that one because I have Ozzy next year as well. But my short 10 is Poison, Belle Biv DeVoe. Let's Talk About Sex, Salt and Pepper. Nothing Compares to You, Sinead O'Connor, of course. I put Green Day on here. Green Day falls into that same category where I actually don't really like most of their stuff until Dookie.
Yeah.
But there are two songs that they released in 90, even though they had two EPs and an album that year, that I actually like. Sweet Children and their cover of My Generation. Those are really the only two songs I really like before Dookie. Feels Good, Tony, Tony, Tony. Wonderful song. I wasn't introduced to it until Rick and Morty, but it's such a great song. I went back and I've listened to it a million times since. It slaps.
I'm a big fan of the Trey Tonys.
Oh yeah, Step by Step, New Kids on the Block, obviously. Blaze of Glory, Bon Jovi. This is one of the few ones that, like, their older stuff, I actually like this song better than most of their other stuff, so they slid in there. I Belong to You, Whitney Houston, and then Mama Said Knock You Out, LL was my last chop of that, or my last short list, with You Can't Touch This, MC Hammer being my track of 1990.
Wow.
Not just because it's fun, you hear it, it's instantly recognizable, but when we talk cultural impact and importance, I don't know if there's a song that's been parodied more times than You Can't Touch This. And the hammer dance from that, again, the parachute pants, the hammer dance, the whole bunch of it, it is iconic in my opinion. Another thing I wanted to, we kind of mentioned this, re-releases and stuff like that because of soundtracks or whatever the case may be. I left off Bowie's compilation that was released this year because, again, they were all released before. But if I was being honest, Space Oddity being re-released is still my favorite of 1990.
I'm in the same boat as you, Joe. I looked at that re-release and I was like, oh man, I know they're all re-releases, but
yeah, I left it off, but I thought we should probably give a shout out because it was technically re-released in 90, but
yeah, I was thinking there's down the road, I think it's 2 years from now, Chicago did their greatest hits album, and there's like 3 tracks on there that would top anything in that year for me, but I'm gonna have to put them on ice. So far we have LL and MC Hammer, very iconic songs. I'm gonna be honest, I spent a long time trying to figure mine out. It was a tough year for me. I mean, there was Birdhouse in Your Soul, and Istanbul by They Might Be Giants. All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You by Heart. King of Wishful Thinking, Go West. Shit ton of Depeche Mode, Jane's Addiction, Been Caught Stealing, the LL Around the Way Girl, Mama's to Knock You Out, Can I Kick It, Tribe Called Quest. Um, Friends in Low Places and Thunder Rolls by Garth Brooks, not huge things for me, but they actually got a lot more people listening to country. And so I think the relevance of that is there. It's also the drunker I get, the more I can get into those songs. Um, Groove is in the Heart, The Delights. Club music replaced or kind of made disco just a distant memory. We had Hold On by Wilson freaking Phillips, which I don't know if you could have gone shopping at any point as a kid with your parents without hearing that in a well, Phase, CVS, whatever store you had. I don't know what you have in Canada Light in Messina there. But I mean, it's just these tracks. We had Lord Boltron himself. How Can We Be Lovers If We Can't Be Friends? Whitney, I'm Your Baby Tonight. We had Ice Ice Baby, Belle de DeVoe, like you said, a shit ton of Pantera, the Fresh Prince theme song of all things. One of my favorite bands, In Excess, had so much stuff out. Madonna's Rock and Vogue, Mariah was on the scene. All this was happening, and to be honest, I picked the song that I did not think I would end up picking. And
Before we get to your song though, can we go back to Bolton? He wasn't on my list, but has he never just had a fling? Why does he have to be friends or he can be lovers?
He's a tender lover. That's Lord Boltron.
I mean, I guess so, but man.
Hey, he falls deep, man. Matters of the heart. The groove is in the heart. This was a tough one for me, but to be honest, this one song has the same impact on me as it did the first time I ever heard it. It's Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor. I remember finding out later down the road that Prince actually wrote it, and I was like, oh, that makes sense for me. Because when it came out, I'm not like, oh, what did Prince do today? But the interesting thing is he's been my favorite musician since I was like 5, which is just wild to me. But it's a song you just can't unhear it once you've heard it. To me, it's so powerful and magical. Sinead's got some pipes on there, and it's just incredible. The lyrics are perfection, which I know weren't hers. But her delivery is absolutely haunting. From the moment that song starts until the end. It's just brilliant. It's one of my favorite songs of all time, and it touches me deep every time I hear it for all different reasons. And it actually wasn't until I heard Chris Cornell's version of it where I was like, oh, somebody could actually do this song better. Because I mean, Prince did a great job on his one recording of it, but Jesus Christ, Chris Cornell's cover of it. So I'm noticing I have a cover theme on my choices. It seems like the last few, but I'm just, this song takes the cake for me. It was interesting because I didn't go the Spotify route of like listening to what in the 90s and stuff. I looked at what was out there. I looked at my playlist. I looked at songs that have meaning to me when they came out, and just this song, I mistakenly hit play. And then I just sat back in my chair, like the first note, and I'm like, this is it. Because it's one of the very few songs in my life where I will just stop and listen, no matter what I'm doing, where I'm hearing it. If it comes on, I just pause and just, that's it. It's like that and Mazzy Stars Fade Into You. Like those two songs they cause me just to stop my track. So I got to go with Sinead O'Connor, Nothing Compares to You.
And it's a beautiful song. And as I said, this morning I would have put it on after, but I did the list before listening to the playlist. And it's interesting because you get this image of Sinead O'Connor now of her on SNL, and she radiates angry. And this is such a loving, tender song, and just feels like more true to who she is. But it feels like because she made a political statement on national television, she's going to be typecast of that. And it just makes me wonder if, had, say, Michael Bolton made that same move on SNL, would he be remembered as this angry man, or would we think of him as the tender songwriter who needs to be?
He would have just had some friends and no lovers.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look, Sinead O'Connor, I don't know if you follow her, but her mental health is a disaster. And it has been just a railroad of shittiness since then. But she was so vulnerable when this came out, and so in a stage of searching for herself, and it just was met with such backlash after that. Where it'll get the radio play, it'll generate the revenue, but she's left just to fend for herself, which makes the track even more haunting because it's that you becomes a lot of different things depending on how you look at it. So I get chills every time I hear that song. I actually was listening to it on the way home the other day and didn't realize I was at a red light that turned green. I was just sitting there listening to it. Didn't go until I get honked got honked at, the windows were open, and hey, fuck you, you know, and all right, cool, I'll go.
Now, did you pull over and fight that person for ruining your groove? You were having such a wonderful moment, and someone had to honk and ruin it. Like,
you know, I did want to, but we were at a roundabout area too, so I had to navigate through that as well. There were a lot of obstacles, and to be quite honest, I run out of breath when I tie my shoes, so I don't know what kind of state I'd be in if I'm trying to fight somebody.
You threw off the emperor's groove.
Right?
what a great story that would be for the rest of your life, though, that you pulled over and fought someone because they interrupted you listening to Sinead O'Connor.
I mean, I almost fought somebody for turning off Lady Gaga at the jukebox when I put $20 in. So,
which Lady Gaga song is the question?
It was all the Lady Gaga. It was just St. Patrick's Day, and I was done with Dropkick Murphy, so I was ready for it.
Understandable. Absolutely understandable.
Understandable on your part, but understandable for cutting it off. But this is the same guy who did play $40 with a Mariah Carey one night at a bar and cleared out the bar. So I get it.
All about it. Now, 1990 didn't surprise me too much. I'm curious about 91. There was a lot that came out that year. 91 was tougher for me than 1990. And Greg, what were your takes on 91?
91, I mean, this is another year for debut albums, and much along the theme with what had Joe said earlier, not a lot that hits me off these debut albums. I mean, Cypress Hill, I love the one song off there, but that's about it off that Cypress Hill album. But the Spin Doctors, they had a couple hits off that. Blur, and I love Coffee and TV.
Coffee, yes.
That's my jam when it comes to Blur. And I mean, of course, he went on and did so much more after Blur. Hole, and there's nothing off that Hole album I like. Del the Funky Homo Sapien debut album. I prefer Del more as a guest spot on things, but Tupac's debut album, same thing, not too much off that. I mean, you have Pearl Jam's debut album, and that was the #2 album of the year, rightfully so. And the Smashing Pumpkins debut album, Gish, was that year. And Gish, I had to re-listen to last night. This isn't the original. This is the 2001 re-release and remaster. Because, like I said, I was trying to really find something that could knock Nirvana out of the top spot. And I was like, well, can Billy Corgan do it? I mean, he did steal his wife. So
that recording on that album, though, it was so there was like no mastering to it. It was just, here we are in a garage, listen.
And the whole album flows beautifully, and it sounds like a Smashing Pumpkins album, but Rhinoceros is the only thing that stands out as being like
that's exactly what I said too. Is it's maybe Rhinoceros off that album, but their other stuff's better.
Yep.
But really impressive in 90 and 91. Mariah Carey, Ice Cube, Tribe, and Superchunk all released albums in both years. And I know releasing an album a year isn't the most uncommon thing, but we're talking some quality artists there. And seems the higher the quality of the artist, the longer you wait between releases. And I mean, Mariah doesn't have anything off those two albums at my short list, but like, good for her. But here is my short list. REM had 3 songs that year that were great. Radio Song featuring KRS-One, Shiny Happy People, which is just a fantastic song, and Losing My Religion, which is another one I was listening today and sounds like it could be released today. Superman song, Crash Test Dummies. Hunger Strike, Temple of Dog, which is another one that sounds like it could be released today. Boys to Men had Motown Philly, and It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday, which is one of those songs when I want to cry, I play It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday and just let it go. A roller skating jam named Saturdays by De La Soul. Into the Great Wide Open and Learning to Fly by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. So after he did his first solo album in 89, gets back with the Heartbreakers, who played on the solo album, and released just 2 great tracks. Now That We Found Love, Heavy D and the Boys. I bought like a used Heavy D and the Boys CD when I was like 18 because I love Now That We Found Love. I don't love Heavy D and the Boys nearly as much as I love that one song, is what I found out. Summertime, Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff, just a great song. Enter Sandman, Metallica. That album might be yeah, the entire Black Album's just a great album, but Enter Sandman's the one. As we've mentioned before, How I Could Just Kill a Man, Cypress Hill, just a gritty street like gang sort of rap song from a band that became later known as being more of like a flirting with that new metal thing.
But like with that voice too.
Yeah. Little Miss Can't Be Wrong and Two Princes by Spin Doctors, OPP by Naughty by Nature. And Joe mentioned it earlier, but Ozzy released, I think, his best solo album this year. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got No More Tears. That album opens with Mr. Tinker Train and just the creepy, like, bells and kids sounding. I Don't Want to Change the World. Mama, I'm Coming Home. And what's great about that album is the legendary Zakk Wylde, who, when I saw Ozzy in 2002, Zakk Wylde was playing guitar on that tour for him. And the break the band took was Zakk Wylde doing a 10-minute solo. And I'm not too big on indulgent solos, but with Zakk Wylde, it just made sense. But Zakk Wylde wrote on that album, and Lemmy wrote on that album as well. So
how crazy is it that Ozzy went from Randy Rhoads, a guitarist, to Zakk Wylde? Like, for fuck's sake. I mean,
well, yeah, and
that's
like,
incredible.
and for the fact that he left Black Sabbath and just takes the replacement guitarist, who's a legendary guitarist, with him.
Yeah.
Zakk Wylde, just an insane man, and when he appears in Aqua Teen Hunger Force, just great. Yeah. Then Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 were released.
Yeah.
I only have November Rain on my short list, even though I love multiple albums or multiple songs off albums for short list, only because I can't stand Axl Rose. I just think he's a garbage human being, and I'm trying really hard not to even reward. But November Rain with that Slash solo, and I think Slash is just a wonderful human being. So they had to weigh out, and Slash wins and gets November Rain. Red Hot Chili Peppers, Give It Away, and Suck My Kiss, and then Under the Bridge, which Under the Bridge is more reminiscent to what they will become when they get back together later, but just really stands out in that album. Scenario, Tribe Called Quest, I Don't Give a Fuck, Tupac, as mentioned before, Rhinoceros by Smashing Pumpkins. And then, honestly, you could list the entire Nevermind album. And that's where I was like, well, maybe I'm going to just pick something else, Nevermind. But Smells Like Teen Spirit's not the best song on that album. But Nevermind as an album is just insane. I think there's 6 legitimate hits on there that any other band would love to have throughout their entire category, and Nirvana has it on this album. So it's just...
You know what's interesting for me about Nirvana? Because, I know everybody goes there that year. I didn't have a true appreciation for them until, besides Unplugged, but from the Muddy Banks of the Wishka, that album was just... that made me a Nirvana fan, and then the Unplugged album just set it over.
Well, and Kurt Cobain's love of Muddy Banks in general, when we get to talking about that Unplugged album, is going to be an interesting conversation. But I mean, the singles from Nevermind were Smells Like Teen Spirit, Come As You Are, Lithium, and In Bloom, which is just killer. I mean, any one of those songs could be it, but like Smells Like Teen Spirit, I mean, it kicked off grunge. I know Pearl Jam was in there, like Hunger Strike was a huge single that year. So grunge was definitely relevant even outside of Nirvana, but that's the song, the angst in Kurt Cobain's voice. Just, it was a perfect storm, that video, everything about it. Like it is like the cultural phenom of cultural phenoms. There's a reason Paul said easy, and I only made it more difficult because I didn't want to make the easy option. So I'm hoping one of you two didn't make the easy option, but yeah, so, it's got to be Smells Like Teen Spirit.
In fact, I did make the easy option, and it's not that. There are years, of course, that I hit heavily on the cultural relevance, the cultural impact. But as I went through these, my short list was massive. And again, I did cut it down to my normal 10 and then my top song. But when I was just going through them, I like Nirvana a lot. I absolutely do. But none of those songs are even probably in my top 5 for this year of songs that I like best. And so it's not Nirvana. My top choice for this year is not Nirvana. My short list, All I Want by Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Yes.
I absolutely love that song. I Touch Myself, the Divinyls, because why not? No, and I love that song, and the Bends do a great cover of it also. Superman's song,
do a great cover
it's
song.
so good. Superman's song, Crash Test Dummies, is wonderful. Life is a Highway, Tom Cochrane, after he had left Red Rider. What else do I have on here? In Bloom is the song off that I like the best. Actually, I love that song.
I agree with you. That is the best song off that album.
It's so good. Good Vibrations, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch is on my list. It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday, Boys to Men, Alive, Pearl Jam, of course. And again, my top, these 10 are not in any specific order. Enter Sandman, Metallica, and then Mama, I'm Coming Home, Ozzy Osbourne. That is my choice off of that album. As much as I love No More Tears as well, it's Mama, I'm Coming Home by just a little bit. Which actually brings me to my number 1 of this year is Hunger Strike, Temple of the Dog.
Yes.
I like it better than any of the Nirvana stuff. I think Cornell has one of the greatest voices, had one of the greatest voices in all of music. It hits, his voice hits me differently. Not to mention that being one of my favorite duets of all time with him and Eddie Vedder. It's so good. And actually that was released before Pearl Jam's album.
Mm-hmm.
That was Eddie Vedder's first ever feature on an album, was his duet with Chris Cornell, not his stuff with Pearl Jam, even though they were released the same year. That was a fun fact I learned doing this research specifically.
I love that they were Mookie Blaylock before they were Pearl Jam. That's my favorite part.
My favorite thing about that Temple of Dog album is it's retroactively been billed as a super group of grunge, but really it was before any of them were like, came out at the start of the grunge movement, and it was before any of them were superpowered grunge folks. My only problem with that is I do love Chris Cornell's voice, but I cannot stand Audio Slave. So it retroactively knocks other Cornell projects down for me, because I believe Soundgarden had an album that year. I didn't even look at what was released that year for Soundgarden, because I'm like
that was
fuck
not,
Audio Slave.
That was not one of the good or one of the better Soundgarden. I did look at it as well and left them all off. That's not one of their best works. I mean, they will show up on my lists again, and depending on the year and what they're competing with, it's possible Soundgarden tops my list as well. There are some just absolutely amazing songs. Spoon Man is so good. But yeah, it's to me, that's not only the vocals are amazing, but just the song in general, like being about against people having too much and the greed and I mean, it's Hunger Strike, right? The title kind of says it all. But yep, that's my choice. And I honestly didn't think it was that tough, unless you're specifically talking cultural impact, because that's a completely different conversation. But for me personally, it wasn't that hard. This one was.
And it's interesting because you've been the one more than the other two of us who've been riding the cultural impact one, and this time you veered just slightly, because I mean, you still went with grunge, and grunge was the cultural impact of that year.
Yeah, I mean, I've listed Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Temple of the Dog all on my short list of only 11. So that's like 30% of my list.
You know, an interesting tidbit though, because and it wasn't related to this, I just went down the rabbit hole the other day with Temple of the Dog, and I was trying to figure out, I was doing some personal research on some stuff. It sounds important. It's not.
As you do.
Yeah.
As one does.
But that song, every time Pearl Jam or Soundgarden released an album, that song would chart pretty high, because also people were like, I thought that was Pearl Jam, or I thought that was Soundgarden. And so radio stations will get requests for this song because they're like, why aren't they both in the same band? You know, there's a lot of confusion about it. And doing all this, that's how I found out Pearl Jam was originally Mookie Blaylock, and that just makes me like them even more. But that song pretty much charted from 91 to 96 because of this, because you had all those albums coming out. And I just think that's amazing. It just shows the relevance of that track, you know, for grunge, for that style of music, for those bands as a whole. Because it's just, nobody knows who, well, we all know now, you know, the internet and shit, but at the time, people were like losing their minds, like, no, what album is this song on? And then it turns out there was a fire. The original recording of that track is no longer around, which is sad. But
I didn't know that one.
The song is just so iconic that it charted for all that time because people had no idea who the actual band was.
I'm going to send us on two tangents, and they're both very different. The first, Joe mentioned, When I Think About You, I Touch Myself. And I told him this earlier today, but while I was listening to the 91 playlist, the first two songs were Smells Like Teen Spirit and then Alive. And then it was Losing My Religion, like three songs that could be contenders for that year. The fourth was When I Think About You, I Touch Myself. And I loved it, but then it went to Let's Talk About Sex, Salt and Pepper. Then it went More Than Words from Extreme, which did not make my short list because fuck those guys. Like, are you not going to reciprocate that more than love, like, or more than words? Come on.
Yeah.
But then I took a little break when it was Everything I Do for You by Bryan Adams. But then it went
Robin Hood.
Then it went to Get Off by Prince. So like 91 was a really horny year in popular music. But the other side tangent, like Joe mentioned, the what Hunger Strike is about, and it's kind of sad that every time we talk about a song that had some kind of like message, how still prevalent that is today.
Yeah. The cool thing about Eddie Vedder is he's stayed the course of all of that, you know, with the charity stuff he's done. I mean, I don't want to say he looks like a normal guy. He doesn't live like me, but I'm far from normal too. But, you know,
You haven't divorced Gwen Stefani? Like,
no, I mean, I tried. She just wouldn't let me go. No, that track is so highly relevant today. I have a Cornell playlist. I just get into modes where I just need Chris Cornell, and that's definitely on there. Great track, Joe. Actually, I didn't consider making that one of mine, and I think it's just because it's so in my repertoire, like in my playlist, that I didn't even consider like, oh yeah, that's my song for the year. Because to be honest, thinking back on it, it probably could have been.
So what's interesting is Gregory mentioned that of the three of us, I'm the one who's generally leaned more into cultural relevance, but then when I don't, right? Because again, Rod Stewart was one of my top choices just because of what it has meant to me, personally as well. So it's funny because I do heavily lean on that cultural impact until I don't, and then it's just like, and fuck cultural impact.
Love it.
Here's my favorite.
Let's roll with it. I love that for you. I gotta say, 91 was actually tougher for me than 90. I Want to Sex You Up, Color Me Bad. Now That We Found Love, you know, we had Smells Like Teen Spirit, we've already said, the entire Black Album. Rush Rush by Paula Abdul, which is my favorite Paula Abdul song. Baby Baby by Amy Grant, which I don't even know how many playlists that's been on mine. OPP, Naughty by Nature, Summertime, we already said. The whole Cooley High Harmony album from Boyz II Men is one of my favorite albums of all time. I know it's got the tracks off it, but I start to finish, I listen to that album every summer. Give It Away, Under the Bridge, Chili Peppers, Something to Talk About, Bonnie Raitt, which great track. All I Want, Told the Wet Sprocket, Gonna Make You Sweat, CNC Music Factory versus Good Vibrations from Marky Mark and the freaking Funky Bunch. We had Learn to Fly, Tom Petty. Spin Doctors came on the scene. We talked about Ozzy already. One from U2 was there. I'm surprised that didn't get mentioned. Right now, Van Halen, Mr. Big, To Be With You, which if you really listen to the lyrics, really fucking creepy. Luther Vandross, Power of Love, which I thought was going to end up being mine, actually. And, you know, we all, like, if you fill out a tournament bracket, you're, like, kind of surprised where you get to at the end. Like, sometimes you don't have this clear winner in your head. So I had sort of a bracket style thing going. And I surprisingly, don't know how the process worked, but I settled on Set Adrift and Memory Bliss by PM Dawn. And I was surprised when I got there, but after my thinking about it, I really wasn't. You know, from the opening harmony, beat drops, you get the sample of Spandau Ballet's True, which is just iconic, and people have no idea what it is until they hear it. So you're hooked right from the start. R&B groups are trying to find their footing. You know, they're trying to blend like the rap with it. They're trying to blend like the hip hop dance and all that stuff. Rap and hip hop were evolving into a million different subsets. Country was becoming mainstream. Hair metal bands were being replaced by hard rock. Synth pop was turned into dance tracks, and emo was like coming out of the scene. PM Dawn gave us pretty much every single style in that, and they gave us just this melodic, flow-heavy track that just touches me at the core of my soul. Like I feel good when I listen to it, and we talk about songs like Hunger Strike, or we talk about the gangster rap that was out and all that stuff. And PM Dawn's just out here like, hey, we got a nice song we sampled, trying to touch your soul. We have smooth rap, which we hadn't quite seen at that point. It was all in your face stuff. I want love. We heard that and stuff, but something about this track just has always stuck with me. It's always found its way onto playlists, and I'm hanging out with people like, what the hell is this? I'm like, oh, I'm just a 90s kid listening to my PM Dawn. But at the end of the song, they do say they're going to turn you into a PM Dawn fan, and they definitely did. Everything about this track works for me, musically, stylistically. I was surprised when I got there, but not shocked in hindsight. With all of the evolution of music, they kind of just sat back and took all of the music in and did something fun and beautiful with it. So Set Adrift on Memory Bliss, PM Dawn is my track.
It's a great track. Joe and I have a good friend, Al, who loves PM Dawn. That's how I know PM Dawn. So I can't argue with that song at all. I am shocked none of us mentioned the Black Sheep song from that. You Can Get With This.
Oh yeah.
Especially because they were part of the native tongues with Tribe and De La Soul, and its relevance since it was in a commercial not too long ago. But that's just a classic hip hop song with the breakdown of the scratches in the chorus. So I didn't mention it because I thought for sure it was going to be on your list, Dan.
I honestly, a lot of those tracks blend the years that they came out in, because they just resurface all the time. And I'm like, was it this year or not? My favorite hip hop song of all time, I know that when that comes out, and I'll get to that when we get there. But there's a lot of those tracks that have been sampled so many times and stuff too, where it's just, I lose track of where it came out. So if it's not on my radar for a specific year, I just kind of lose it and just have it on a random playlist. But I'm disappointed in myself at the same time. I think I'm actually surprised by most choices on this, and it's an awesome start to the 90s, and it only gets tougher from here. A lot tougher, I think. And the genre bending doesn't help. So I'm very excited to see how things turn out. I'm also excited to have people lend their opinions to this too. I think that was kind of a fun element.
It was. I didn't look at what anyone said, even though you posted this forever ago, and I saw the comments going. I didn't look at anything specifically because I didn't want anyone else's opinion to taint mine. Same reason I wasn't going to go and actively listen to the songs until after. I guess I listened to the Gish album before I made my choice for sure what song it was, but that was to try and convince myself not to pick Nirvana. I do have a question. If we should go, now that we're moving into the 90s and more of our youth and adolescence, if we should be going 1 year per episode, because we are stretching longer and longer going with 2, because there's just so much we all want to talk about.
I think also there's a lot more news relevant stuff that starts to happen in the 90s that may require more time. So I'd be down for 1 year each time. We're into the Kurt Loder years where there's a story every day. So I think that would be fair. And though we'll all be retired by the time we finish that, that's okay. It'll just keep people hanging on longer.
I'm interested to see what happens when we come to a year that sucks. I don't know. I don't know every song released off the top of my head, but just imagine if 97 just sucks.
I can promise you 97 doesn't suck.
I think I said that one because I have Vertical Horizon stuck in my head, and I think that's when the big Vertical Horizon album was released, and I love every track off that one.
Gray Sky Morning, love that song.
But I'm just picturing we get to a year that's just was just trash music, and we're like, well, pod's done, bye.
I'm actually sad about the year I get to 311. Was it 311, Tonic, and Third Eye Blind? I bought the cassette tape on the same day. I got to get to
Is that going to be 94?
I believe that is 94. And Lemon Parade is my favorite album of that year.
That's what I was thinking the other night when I was looking at 91 and 92. I'm like, I think these are the last 2 years. I don't have memories of necessarily the songs coming out, but shortly afterwards. Because by 93, now I'm 8 years old and I'm like engaged in it. And I know, Joe, you're going to be a couple years behind us, but I know how prevalent music was in your life. So I think you may have even come to it earlier than I did by discovering music on your own.
I have a feeling like my actual memories connecting with releases aren't going to be until probably the early 2000s, because even in the 90s, even if I was around and making, like, I know I was around and have memories from when like the first Matchbox 20 was released, but it's all such a hodgepodge in my brain that I couldn't pick out if I liked that song when it was released, or if I like that album because Long Day played in the green room of my second grade play when we were all backstage waiting for it to start. I distinctly remember it being on the radio, but I couldn't tell you if that was the year that it came out at all.
Like, I'm already here saying, like, when I get to 1994, 16 Stone by Butch can't be my favorite song because it's an entire album. You know, it's just it's tough in those years. I mean, then we get to 97, that's really tough for me too. But yeah, I think it's gonna be fun. I think a year at a time will be a lot of content, especially as we get through the newsworthy stuff as well. Some posthumous music, and yeah, I think one track for a while will work, especially in the 90s. 2000s, I think, were a bit easier because Nelly just wins the 2000s. And so,
get out of here. Get out of here.
And got canceled twice today.
If you think about the 2000s, though, like 90s are going to be tough anyway because it's our adolescence. I mean, I think about 94 is probably when I became obsessed with MTV, and that's what I did was watch like MTV jams in the afternoon, and then they're 6 o'clock back when MTV like liked that dinner time.
Oh yeah.
And they programmed for dinner time. So I'm like, that's when I'm watching Moby on TV talk about his music video. So that'll be interesting. But when we get into 2000s, when we're pirating stuff and like the early downloads and just the amount of music we were exposed to then, and all the music websites online. So you have Pitchfork, you have the Rolling Stone editors writing about what they love that's not making the actual Rolling Stone magazine, I think, which is my favorite part about that time period. So I think, honestly, I don't think it's until maybe the 2010s when we start becoming old men that we might be. But even then, as I've tried to expand my music, it could just be a fun conversation if our short lists are only like 5 songs deep, where we're just talking about how we discovered these artists. So
here I am in 2021 shaking my broom telling kids to get off my lawn. So yeah, this is going to be a great.
So I actually think there's going to be a period of time in the 2000s where my choices are going to be a little bit limited, because I can remember that's when I'm going through junior high, getting into high school, and 2004 is when I started high school. But back then I can remember being so nervous about people judging me that I didn't want to listen to pop music because that was the thing that like girls listened to. But I didn't want to listen to like the emo screamo type stuff because that's what the emo kids listen to, the goths listen to, and I was like trying to be right in the middle. And so I think I narrowed what I listened to significantly through that time period to either the stuff my friends were listening to or the stuff Gregory was listening to. And so I think it's going to be interesting going through those years for me.
I had mixtapes of Cold Chamber with NSYNC and Marilyn Manson, 9 Inch Nails, Britney Spears. That was all my cassette tapes I made. Monster Magnet.
Well, I think that it's going to be really interesting because the rise of the boy bands with NSYNC and New Kids on the Block and O-Town, who was of course the best boy band.
Ashley Parker Angel, baby.
I love O-Town.
Was that the guy with dreads?
That was the blonde dude.
Okay, I only remember there was a guy with dreads because my dear friend Trevor wanted dreads, so he settled for cornrows because he knew he couldn't pull the dreads off. But I love you, Trevor, even though you're kind of embarrassing.
I'm kind of sad you left out Westlife there too. They have
I don't even know who Westlife is. So I was in the not going to listen to pop music phase during that. So it'll be interesting because that continues on through when Joe hits his not listening to pop music phase too, to now as adults where we love pop music.
Mhm.
I will say though, I think we're gonna find my choices are going to start drifting heavier and heavier after we get through the 90s. Because again, a lot of these is me looking back on songs, and it's only in the last few years where they've actually had importance to me. Like everything in the 80s is I'm looking back at music, and so what I'm remembering and what I'm picking out are things that are still played if you turn on like a classic rock station, or you know, but in the last 10 years probably I've been listening to more heavy things that most people probably haven't even heard of, like probably going to see Emerosas pop up in my short list as we come along in the next couple of decades, but it'll
I'm
be
all for it.
interesting to track that too.
And that'll be fun too, because that's where we really start to diverge, because you went heavier and I went basically like girl punk bands while you were going heavier. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those. I'm so happy I'm in my female fronted punk rock phase at 35 because it's fucking awesome and those women rule. So
And I'm still just out here listening to Natalie Imbruglia's Left of the Middle album and wondering what everybody else missed. um, so I'm really pumped for this. I think it's going to be a really good time. And with that, gentlemen, we have 1992 coming up, which is a really big year, actually. And I'm curious to see where this takes us next week. I have my second dose of COVID next week, so I'm hoping that I'm not too under. But if I am, it could be fun because I could be all sentimental and totally change my pick. So,
Awesome.
are you getting the second dose Tuesday?
Monday, and then so I'm told the next
Okay.
day the recovery's rough. But
Okay.
I'm also told if you drink a lot of water, it's not. I just happen to drink a lot of vodka in its place, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm hoping my migraine tempers because I'm going to try and get my first dose on Tuesday, as long as it's like a dull roar and not a full blown migraine like it was today. So it could be interesting. You could be second day of your second dose, and I could be first day of my first dose. So
Oh wow, when our powers combine.
No, I have until the 4th to get my second one, and then I'm getting my second one.
Nice. I'm happy we're all doing it. The two of you, and I want you to bring it up next week because you should have your package by then. But there's something special on the way to the Brothers Dill Cox residence,
Awesome.
and it's going to be fun. I'll just say that. But Greg, Joe, I appreciate you, gentlemen. This is a blast of a journey. Wouldn't want to do it with anybody else, and I look forward to traveling to 1992 with you guys next week.
Been
going on
enjoying
that time warp.
fun, so I'm enjoying these so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, for putting this together.
Absolutely.
It's a great time, gentlemen.
And if you enjoyed this, folks, go to Spotify, search No Coast Defenders, and listen to Dan and I with Tim, who you will soon be able to find all over this YouTube channel of Dan's. But listen to our podcast. I almost did an emergency podcast today because I was like brainstorming crazy ideas of what could happen, but it would have just been me spouting out nonsense. So, but No Coast Defenders on Spotify. Listen to Dan and I talk comic books and comic book related movies. So
it is a blast. And Joe, what projects does Amanda have going on right now? Give her another plug.
I don't think currently she's doing anything but redesigning the house every day. So she loves doing that. But again, check out her website, amandairwin.com, if you need any graphic design stuff done. Or if you're a writer, you need editing. She does that too. She's great at it. So,
And I'm hoping to potentially have her on in a few Sundays and give her the spotlight of her own.
she said she did acquiesce and say she would do it. She does not like being in front of cameras or anything like that, but she did eventually acquiesce, and she's nervous for it, but she's willing.
Well, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, but if she's there for the spotlight, I'm here to shine it. So
Awesome.
I just want to say, guys, I appreciate your time here. My friend Tim and I will start reviewing the MCU because why not tomorrow? Who doesn't need another video? So tune in for that. But next week, we shall have some more fun in 1992. Simpler times. I think I was just watching Cops when it was live and just America's Most Wanted and listening to some LL. So I
Don't
look
bring your
forward to
propaganda in here.
I look forward to chatting with you gents next week. And until then, just much love and stay well.
Thanks,
You too,
Dan.
Dan.